The rain had been falling in a steady drizzle all afternoon, turning the streets into glistening ribbons under the streetlights. Ethan tightened his jacket around himself as he guided his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, toward the glowing red and yellow sign of Sonny's Diner. It wasn't much, but to them, it was a treat. Most nights, dinner was macaroni at home or whatever leftovers Ethan could bring from the night shift at the warehouse. Tonight was special. Lily had gotten top marks on her spelling test, and he had managed to squeeze out a little extra from last week's paycheck. The bell over the door chimed as they stepped inside, greeted by the warmth of sizzling grills and the comforting aroma of coffee and fried food. Lily's eyes lit up, scanning the dessert display with its rows of pies and cakes. Ethan smiled, feeling the small joy of being able to give her this moment. They slid into a booth near the window. Just across from them, at a smaller table, sat a woman with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. 2 young children, a boy around 10 and a girl no older than 6, sat beside her. Their clothes were clean but threadbare, and the way they leaned toward each other suggested a closeness born from shared hardships. Ethan noticed the woman scanning the menu without really reading it, her brow furrowed, fingers tapping anxiously on the laminated page. Her children glanced at her, then whispered softly to each other. The boy's voice carried just enough for Ethan to catch. "Mom, can we get just fries? I'm okay without a burger." His sister nodded, her small hands folded on the table. "Yeah, me too." The woman forced a smile, brushing her hand over their hair. "We'll see, sweetheart." Ethan's chest tightened. He recognized that tone, the one parents used when they didn't want to admit they couldn't afford more. He glanced at Lily, who was happily coloring on the kids' menu, oblivious to the quiet struggle just a few feet away. The waitress came to take orders. The woman across the aisle ordered 2 small plates of fries and 3 waters. Ethan hesitated, his eyes moving between them and the menu in his hands. He knew what it felt like to count every penny. When the waitress returned to him, he spoke without thinking too hard. "Actually, could you add 3 cheeseburgers, extra fries, and milkshakes to my order? And bring them to that table over there." The waitress blinked, then smiled knowingly. "Of course." When the food arrived, the woman looked startled. I think there's a mistake," she said softly. Ethan leaned over and smiled. "No mistake. We've got plenty of room at our table. Why don't you join us?" After a pause, she nodded, gathering her children. They slid into the booth opposite him and Lily. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined. The moment Claire, that was the woman's name, slid into the booth across from Ethan, her children pressed close to her, their eyes darting between the plates of food and Ethan's warm smile. "This is very kind of you," she said, her voice low, almost cautious. "But you really didn't have to." "I wanted to," Ethan interrupted gently. "Besides, Lily here would never finish all those fries by herself." Lily beamed, happy to be part of the excuse. "You can have some too," she told the boy and girl, nudging the basket toward them. The boy hesitated only a moment before reaching for a fry. His sister followed suit, her eyes widening as she tasted it, as if it had been far too long since she'd had something so simple yet so satisfying. Ethan noticed how Claire watched them eat, not with impatience, but with a quiet, bittersweet relief. Parents knew that look. It was the feeling of seeing your kids enjoy something you'd been worried you couldn't provide. The waitress set down the cheeseburgers and milkshakes. The children's faces lit up like Christmas morning. Claire opened her mouth to protest, but Ethan just shook his head. "It's already done. Just enjoy." For a few minutes, the only sounds were the clink of cutlery and the hum of the diner around them. But soon, conversation began to flow. Ethan told them about his work at the warehouse, how he drove forklifts during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store on weekends. He explained that Lily's mom had passed away 3 years ago, and it had been just the 2 of them ever since. Claire listened intently, her hands wrapped around her milkshake glass. When Ethan asked about her, she gave a small shrug. "It's been a rough couple of years," she said vaguely. "Some changes I didn't see coming. We're adjusting." Her eyes dropped to the table, but Ethan didn't push. He knew that sometimes people weren't ready to share everything. The children, however, were less guarded. The boy introduced himself as Jacob, and his sister as Emma. They spoke about how they liked drawing, how they'd once had a dog, and how their mom made the best pancakes in the world when they had the ingredients. Lily giggled and told them about the time she and her dad tried to make pancakes and ended up with something more like scrambled eggs. The table erupted in laughter. The waitress passed by, smiling at the unlikely group. She refilled their waters and left a slice of chocolate pie in the center of the table, on the house. The kids' eyes widened again, and this time, Claire allowed herself to take a small bite too. By the time the plates were cleared, the diner's rain-streaked windows were glowing under neon lights, and the world outside felt far away. Ethan noticed the change in Claire's face, the tension in her jaw had eased, her eyes a little brighter. For just this evening, she didn't look like a woman burdened by invisible weights. She looked like a mom enjoying a night out with people who cared. As they prepared to leave, Ethan reached for the check. "Don't even think about it," he told her with a grin. Claire hesitated, as if she wanted to say something, but instead just whispered, "Thank you. I mean it, more than you know." Ethan didn't realize just how true that was. The following Saturday morning, Ethan and Lily walked into Sunny's diner again. He told himself it was just for a weekend treat, but a part of him hoped they might see Claire and her kids. Luck, or something more, was on his side. Claire sat in a corner booth with Jacob and Emma, the three of them sharing a plate of pancakes. "Well, look who it is," Claire said, smiling warmly. "Mind if we join you?" Ethan asked. "Of course not," she replied, shifting her coffee cup to make space. They ordered pancakes for the kids, eggs for the adults, and soon the table was alive with chatter. But as they talked, Ethan began to notice details he'd missed the first night. When the waitress came by, she addressed Claire with a polite, "Good morning, ma'am," in a tone that carried a hint of respect. Later, the manager himself emerged from the kitchen to refill coffee, something Ethan had never seen before, and he poured Claire's cup first. "Everything all right for you today?" he asked softly. Claire nodded. "Perfect, thank you." Ethan frowned slightly. The attention felt unusual. Then, as a delivery driver passed by with crates of fresh produce, he paused at their table. "Morning, Miss Claire," he greeted with a nod, as if addressing someone important. Ethan caught the title instantly. Miss Claire. Not Miss or Ma'am, her name, spoken with familiarity and respect. She smiled in return, but quickly changed the subject, asking Ethan about Lily's school. While the kids talked, Ethan's eyes wandered to the wall behind the counter. Framed photographs told the diner's history. The first location, grand openings, and the original founders. In one black and white photo, a smiling couple held scissors at a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The woman's dark eyes and sharp smile looked familiar. Ethan glanced at Claire. She was staring at the same picture, her expression briefly distant, almost wistful. "You a fan of diner history?" he asked lightly. She blinked, turning her attention back to her coffee. "Just nice to see a place keep its roots," she said quickly. He didn't push, but his curiosity sharpened. When breakfast was over, Jacob and Emma ran to the door with Lily, laughing as they tried to hold it open for one another. Claire stayed behind to tidy the table, gathering stray crayons and napkins. As they left, every staff member they passed seemed to greet her personally. "See you soon, Miss Claire. Have a great day." Each farewell felt deliberate. Not just polite, personal. Outside, the crisp air carried the scent of coffee from inside. Claire gave him a small smile. "Thanks for joining us again." The kids loved it. Ethan smiled back, but inside, he knew there was more to Claire than she was telling. The following weekend, Ethan decided to treat Lily to dinner at Sunny's again. She had been talking about seeing Jacob and Emma all week, and though Ethan didn't want to assume they'd bump into Claire, something in him hoped they would. The moment they stepped in, Lily spotted them. Claire and her children were tucked into the same corner booth, laughter spilling between them as Jacob tried to balance a fry on his nose. "Dad, can we sit with them?" Lily whispered eagerly. Ethan grinned. "Why not?" They joined the table, and soon plates were ordered, burgers for the kids, chicken for Ethan, and a salad for Claire. Conversation came easy now, they spoke like old friends. But Ethan couldn't shake the memory of how the staff treated her. As the evening went on, Ethan excused himself to pay the bill before the kids finished their milkshakes. The cashier, a young woman with a sunny smile, typed a few keys on the register and then shook her head. "Oh, no charge tonight. MS. Claire already took care of it." Ethan froze. "Ms. Claire, already?" The cashier nodded, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yeah, she takes care of her guests all the time." It was the phrasing that made him pause. Her guests. Ethan turned toward the table. Claire was speaking with the manager, a short, balding man in a crisp white shirt. He stood straight, almost formally, as he spoke to her. She nodded, said something quietly, and the man chuckled, like they were old friends. When she looked up and saw Ethan watching, her expression shifted, not guilty, exactly, but almost, resigned. She excused herself from the manager and walked toward him. "You paid, didn't you?" he asked, eyebrows raised. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "I may have interfered a little." "Claire," he said slowly, "what's going on? Everyone here treats you like you're—" "I don't know, someone important." She hesitated, glancing toward her children. Then she sighed, motioning for him to follow her toward the quieter end of the diner. "My grandparents opened the first Sunny's diner 60 years ago," she began softly. "My parents expanded it. And when they passed away 5 years ago, I inherited the entire chain." Ethan stared at her. "You own Sunny's? All of them?" She nodded. "Every single one. But after my divorce last year, and some personal things I'd rather not get into right now, I needed to step away. I left the corporate office, took the kids, and just lived quietly for a while. I didn't want people treating me like a walking wallet." Ethan let out a slow breath, processing. "So when we met, you were just here, alone with your kids. And you let me think that I was just another struggling parent," she finished gently. "I didn't let you think anything. You saw me and decided to help anyway. You didn't know who I was, and you didn't care." There was no accusation in her voice, only gratitude. "I come to different locations sometimes," she continued. "I watch how things run. I see what customers experience. It's the only way I can really understand what's happening on the ground. That night, you reminded me what these diners are supposed to be about: kindness, community, connection." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, still trying to wrap his head around it. "You could have told me." "I could have," she agreed, "but then it wouldn't have been real. Your kindness, it was genuine." Her eyes softened. "And that means more to me than anything money can buy." From across the diner, Lily waved from the booth, her milkshake mustache making Jacob and Emma laugh. Claire's smile grew. "Come on, before they drink the whipped cream straight from the glass." As they walked back, Ethan felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just the surprise of her revelation. It was the realization that sometimes, people carried entire worlds inside them that you couldn't see unless they chose to share. And Claire had just shared hers. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of Lily humming in the kitchen. She was packing her school bag, her hair sticking out in every direction. "We're gonna see Jacob and Emma again, right?" she asked between mouthfuls of toast. Ethan smiled. "I think that can be arranged." That evening, Claire called. Her voice was lighter than he'd ever heard it. "Can you meet me at the diner tomorrow?" "Just you, not the kids." Ethan agreed, curious. The following day, the diner felt different without the usual chatter of children. Claire was already there, sitting in their booth with a leather folder on the table. She looked more put together than usual, a blazer over her blouse, hair neatly tied back. "I wanted to thank you properly," she began. "Not just for that night, but for reminding me of what matters." She opened the folder and slid a piece of paper toward him. Ethan glanced down and froze. It was an employment contract, full-time manager position at a Sonny's Diner location in a neighboring town. The salary was nearly double what he made working both of his current jobs combined. "Claire. I can't." "You can," she said firmly. "You're a natural leader. You know how to treat people. I've watched you interact with staff, with customers, with my kids. You're exactly the kind of person I want running one of my diners." Ethan hesitated. "Why me? You have hundreds of employees. You could pick anyone." She leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Because you helped me without knowing who I was. That kind of character is rare. And I want people like that around me, for my business, and for my family." The last words caught him off guard. Her family. He thought of Lily, how quickly she'd taken to Jacob and Emma. How natural it had felt, the five of them sharing meals like they'd known each other for years. "This is a lot," he said finally. "I know," she replied with a small smile. "But you don't have to answer today. Just know the offer stands." 2 days later, Ethan accepted. The new job came with long hours at first, but the difference in his life was immediate. No more graveyard shifts at the warehouse. No more juggling weekends between 2 jobs. He could pick Lily up from school, cook dinner without rushing, even read to her before bed. Claire visited often, sometimes with her kids, sometimes alone. She never flaunted her wealth, she was just Claire, the woman who laughed easily and asked about Lily's science projects, who teased Ethan when he burned toast in the diner's staff kitchen. Over time, their lives intertwined. Lily and Emma became inseparable, Jacob took to teaching Lily how to draw, and Sunday dinners became a tradition for the 5 of them. One evening, months after he'd started the job, Ethan stood at the counter of his new diner, wiping down the last table before closing. Claire had stayed behind to help lock up, her kids playing quietly in a booth. "You know," she said as she stacked menus, "the first Sonny's Diner was started because my grandfather bought a stranger a hot meal during the Great Depression. He believed a warm plate could change someone's day. Sometimes even their life." Ethan looked at her, a slow smile forming. "Sounds familiar." She met his gaze, and there was a warmth there that had nothing to do with business. Over the months, Ethan had realized something. Her wealth wasn't what made her remarkable. It was the way she carried it, the way she valued people, the way she never forgot where her roots were. And she had seen something in him worth believing in, even when he couldn't see it himself. As they turned off the lights and stepped out into the cool night, Claire's hand brushed against his. Neither pulled away. The story of how a single dad took a poor mom and her kids to a cheap diner had traveled quietly among the staff and friends of Sonny's Diner. Most told it as a sweet coincidence, a simple act of kindness. But Ethan knew better. It was a turning point. The moment 2 families, each carrying their own battles, found not just comfort but possibility in each other's company. And as he watched Lily skip ahead with Jacob and Emma under the neon glow of the Sonny sign, Ethan thought about how strange life could be. One night, he'd just been trying to buy a stranger dinner. Now, that stranger, and her children, were part of his life in a way he never saw coming. Sometimes, you didn't just feed someone for a night. Sometimes, you open the door to a whole new chapter.